Now let us explore two powerful structural ideas: emotional geography and the too late structure. First, emotional geography. In Shakespearean tragedy, space and setting are not just physical locations. They reflect the inner emotional state of the characters. In King Lear, the storm is not just a natural event. It represents chaos, confusion, and mental disturbance. As Lear's mind becomes unstable, the external world also becomes violent and disorderly. Similarly, in Macbeth, the castle is not simply a place of residence. It becomes a space filled with guilt, fear, and tension after the murder of the king. The setting itself feels heavy and disturbing. So, the key insight is, setting acts like a psychological map. It shows what is happening inside the characters' minds. Now, let us move to the second idea, the too late structure. In Shakespearean tragedy, realization often comes after the damage is already done. This connects to the idea of anagnorisis, or recognition, where the hero understands the truth. But in Shakespeare, this recognition is delayed. For example, in Othello, Othello realizes the truth only after he has killed Desdemona. His understanding comes too late to change anything. Similarly, in King Lear, Lear realizes Cordelia's true love only after rejecting her and losing everything. This delay intensifies the tragedy because the hero gains knowledge only when it is useless. So, the key idea is, in Shakespearean tragedy, realization comes too late, making the suffering deeper and irreversible. Now let us understand the Hegelian theory of tragedy. This idea comes from G.W.F. Hegel, and it offers a very different way of looking at tragedy. According to Hegel, tragedy is not a simple conflict between right and wrong. Instead, it is a clash between two kinds of right. This means both sides in the conflict have some justification. Each side represents a valid truth or value, but these truths come into conflict with each other. A classic example is Antigone, where the conflict is between the state and the family. Both have their own moral importance. Now let us apply this idea to King Lear. At first, we may think Lear is completely wrong. But Hegel's view helps us see the situation more deeply. Lear represents authority, order, and the idea of kingship. He expects loyalty and respect. On the other hand, his daughters represent another kind of truth: personal interest, emotional expression, and individual response to power. So, the conflict is not simply good versus evil. It is a clash between authority and love, between power and personal truth. This leads to an important exam insight. Lear is not wrong alone. The daughters also represent another form of truth. So, tragedy arises because these two rights cannot exist together peacefully. This makes Shakespearean tragedy more complex, because it moves beyond simple moral judgment and shows conflict between equally powerful values. Now let us understand performance theory in Shakespearean tragedy. This idea focuses on the fact that a play is not just a written text. It comes alive only when it is performed on stage. According to performance theory, the meaning of a tragedy can change depending on how it is acted, directed, and interpreted. So, the same play can feel very different in different performances. Let us take the example of Hamlet. Hamlet is a complex character, and different actors can present him in different ways. In one performance, Hamlet may appear weak and indecisive, unable to act. In another, he may be shown as highly intellectual, someone who thinks deeply and questions everything. In yet another interpretation, he can be portrayed as heroic, someone struggling bravely against a difficult situation. So, the character is not fixed. His meaning changes with performance. This idea is closely linked to performance studies, which focuses on how texts are interpreted through acting, staging, voice, and movement. The key insight is, Shakespearean tragedy is not a single, fixed meaning. It is flexible and evolves through performance. This makes Shakespeare's plays timeless, because each generation can reinterpret them in new ways. Now let us understand the idea of cosmic disorder in Shakespearean tragedy. This concept is based on the belief that there is a connection between human life and the natural world. When the king, who represents order and stability, falls, it does not affect only the political system. It also disturbs the natural order of the universe. This relationship is often explained using the term macrocosm-microcosm. The macrocosm means the larger universe, and the microcosm means the individual human world. Shakespeare shows that these two are closely connected. Let us take the example of King Lear. When Lear loses control and the kingdom falls into chaos, we see a violent storm. This storm is not just weather. It reflects the disorder in Lear's mind and in the political world. Now consider Macbeth. After Macbeth kills the king, darkness begins to dominate the play. Strange and unnatural events occur, suggesting that nature itself is disturbed by this crime. So, the fall of the king leads to chaos not only in society but also in the universe. The key exam idea to remember is the macrocosm-microcosm relationship. The disorder in the human world is reflected in the disorder of nature. This shows how deeply connected Shakespeare's tragedies are to both human and cosmic order. Now let us look at the major Shakespearean tragedies and the key features. These are very important for exams, so try to remember both the themes and the unique insights. First, Hamlet. This is a psychological tragedy. The central theme is revenge, but what makes it unique is delay. Hamlet does not act immediately. He keeps thinking and questioning. His main flaw is indecision. He reflects deeply but struggles to take action. A famous critical insight by A.C. Bradley is that Hamlet is a man of thought, meaning his thinking dominates his action. Second, Othello. The central theme here is jealousy. Othello is manipulated by Iago, the main villain, who uses language and deception to control him. An important rare point is that this is a domestic tragedy. Unlike other tragedies, it focuses more on personal and family relationships rather than large political conflict. Third, King Lear. The main theme is blindness, both literal and metaphorical. Characters fail to see the truth, both physically and mentally. The Gloucester subplot is very important here. A rare insight is that this play has a double tragedy structure. Both Lear's story and Gloucester's story run parallel and intensify the overall effect. Fourth, Macbeth. The central theme is ambition. Macbeth's desire for power leads to his rapid downfall. This is the shortest of Shakespeare's major tragedies, and it shows the fastest tragic fall. The movement from hero to tyrant happens very quickly. Finally, Romeo and Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. This is a love tragedy. The story is driven strongly by fate, and the lovers are caught in circumstances beyond their control. A rare point is that it is a youth tragedy. The tragedy happens to very young characters, which makes it emotionally intense and different from the others. So, each tragedy has its own theme, structure, and unique insight, but all of them together show the richness and depth of Shakespearean tragedy. Now let us understand the theory of A.C. Bradley, one of the most important critics of Shakespearean tragedy. Bradley defines tragedy as a story of exceptional suffering. This means the suffering we see in tragedy is not ordinary. It is intense, powerful, and affects both the individual and the world around them. According to Bradley, the tragic hero is not a perfect person. He has weaknesses, but at the same time, he is noble, someone of high status and strong personality. This combination makes the hero both admirable and human. Now, let us look at the cause of the hero's fall. Bradley says that tragedy happens because of two main factors. First, internal flaw. The hero has a weakness such as ambition, jealousy, pride, or indecision. This flaw plays a major role in leading to disaster. Second, external forces. These include fate, supernatural elements, and circumstances that push the hero further toward destruction. So, the fall is not caused by only one factor. It is a combination of inner weakness and outer pressure. Bradley's famous idea can be summarized in this line: tragedy is a tale of suffering and calamity leading to death. This definition is very important for exams because it clearly explains the essence of Shakespearean tragedy. Now let us look at the existential interpretation of Shakespearean tragedy. This is a modern way of reading Shakespeare, influenced by the philosophy of existentialism. The central idea here is that life appears uncertain, meaningless, and without clear purpose. Human beings struggle to find meaning in a world that does not give definite answers. Let us take the example of Hamlet. In his famous, "To be or not to be" soliloquy, Hamlet questions the value of life itself. He is unsure whether it is better to live and suffer or to end life and escape pain. This shows deep existential doubt about existence, purpose, and action. Now consider King Lear. In this play, suffering often feels absurd. Good characters suffer without reason, and the world does not seem to follow any clear moral logic. This creates a sense that life is chaotic and unfair. So, from an existential perspective, Shakespeare's tragedies do not offer clear answers or moral certainty. Instead, they show the confusion, struggle, and uncertainty of human existence. This links directly to existentialism, which focuses on individual experience, doubt, and the search for meaning in an uncertain world. The key insight is, Shakespearean tragedy can be seen as a reflection of human existence in a world that does not always make sense. Now let us look at some important modern critical theories used to interpret Shakespearean tragedy. These approaches help us go beyond the story and understand deeper meanings. First, psychological criticism. This approach focuses on the inner mind of the characters, their thoughts, emotions, and mental conflicts. For example, Hamlet can be seen as a deeply troubled character, often interpreted as suffering from depression. His hesitation, overthinking, and emotional struggle become central to understanding the tragedy. Second, feminist criticism. This approach examines the role and position of women in the plays. It often argues that female characters are marginalized or treated as victims within a male-dominated society. For example, Desdemona and Ophelia are both innocent women who suffer and die, raising questions about gender, power, and injustice. Third, new historicism. This approach studies the political and cultural context in which the plays were written. It looks at how ideas of power, kingship, authority, and society in Shakespeare's time influence the themes of the tragedy. So, the play is connected to real historical power structures, not just imagination. Finally, Marxist criticism. This approach focuses on power, class struggle, and control. It examines how authority is maintained, how power is gained or lost, and how inequality shapes the actions of characters. So, tragedies can also be seen as conflicts over power and control within society. Together, these modern theories show that Shakespearean tragedy is not fixed. It can be interpreted in many different ways depending on the critical approach we use. Now let us look at some rare and less commonly discussed points in Shakespearean tragedy. These are very useful for writing high-quality exam answers. First, no pure villain. In Shakespeare, even the so-called villains are not completely evil. They often have human qualities, emotions, or moments of conflict. For example, Macbeth is not a pure villain. He has a conscience. Before committing murder, he hesitates and feels guilt. This makes him a complex character rather than a simple evil figure. Second, tragedy as disorder. Tragedy represents a breakdown of order, not only in society but also in nature. In King Lear, the storm reflects chaos in the political world and in Lear's mind. Nature itself seems disturbed when human order collapses. Third, time compression. In many Shakespearean tragedies, events happen very quickly. Once the tragic action begins, everything moves rapidly toward disaster. This creates intensity and makes the fall of the hero feel sudden and powerful. Fourth, language shift. Shakespeare uses language to show the movement of the tragedy. At the beginning, we see structured poetic language. As characters lose control and move toward madness, language becomes more broken and shifts into prose. Finally, at the point of complete collapse, we often see silence. Fifth, death as resolution. In Shakespearean tragedy, death is not just an ending. It acts as a form of resolution. After the chaos, suffering, and disorder, death brings a kind of closure and restores balance, especially at the moral or political level. So, these rare points help us see that Shakespearean tragedy is not simple. It is rich, complex, and full of deeper meanings beyond the obvious story. Now let us look at some important quotes from Shakespearean tragedy and key critical ideas. These are very useful for exams because they can strengthen your answers. First, from Macbeth, "Fair is foul, foul is fair." This line introduces the idea of moral confusion. It shows that what appears good may actually be evil, and what seems evil may appear good. This confusion runs throughout the play and reflects the disturbed world Macbeth enters. Next, from Hamlet, "To be or not to be." This is one of the most famous lines in literature. It expresses Hamlet's deep existential doubt. He is questioning life itself, whether to continue living or to escape suffering through death. Now, from Othello, "Oh beware, my lord, of jealousy." This line is spoken by Iago, and it is deeply ironic. While he warns Othello about jealousy, he is actually creating that jealousy. It shows how language can deceive and manipulate. Now let us look at some critical ideas. According to A.C. Bradley, tragedy is about an exceptionally noble hero who falls into suffering and death. This highlights the importance of the hero's greatness and the tragic downfall. According to G.W.F. Hegel, tragedy is a collision of moral forces. It is not simply good versus evil, but a conflict between two valid truths. Finally, the modern view suggests that tragedy is the instability of meaning. This means there is no single clear interpretation. Meaning keeps shifting, and the audience must engage with uncertainty. So, these quotes and ideas help us understand both the language of the plays and the critical perspectives behind them. Now let us bring everything together with a conclusion on Shakespearean tragedy. Shakespearean tragedy goes beyond simple moral ideas of good versus evil. It presents a complex world where clear answers are not always possible. Throughout the plays, we see the role of irony. The audience often knows more than the characters, which creates tension and deepens the tragic effect. We also see uncertainty. Characters struggle to understand truth, and their knowledge is often limited or mistaken. This connects to the idea that human understanding itself is incomplete. Another important aspect is moral luck. Outcomes are not decided only by character, but also by chance and unpredictable events. Shakespeare also uses delayed recognition. Characters like Othello and King Lear realize the truth only after it is too late to change anything. Finally, justice in Shakespearean tragedy is not clear or guaranteed. Innocent characters suffer, and the resolution often feels emotionally incomplete. So, the key idea is this: Shakespearean tragedy presents a world shaped by irony, uncertainty, chance, and limited human understanding. It is not just about what happens in the story, but about how deeply it makes us think and feel about life itself.